أعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أرسله بشيرا ونذيرا بين يدي الساعة وأرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله ولو كره المشركون من يطع الله ورسوله فقد رشد واهتدى ومن يعصهما فإنه قد غوى وإنه لا يضر إلا نفسه ولا يضر الله شيء إن خير الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن خير الأمور عوامها وشر الأمور محدثاتها كل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار أما بعد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في محكم القرآن الكريم في سورة الأنفال يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تخونوا الله والرسول وتخونوا أماناتكم وأنتم تعلمون صدق الله العظيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My dear brothers and sisters, as institutions grow, in particular, the role of leadership becomes significant. And by institutions, I'm referring broadly, which includes the family as an institution, the responsibilities we may have for teams as institutions. And particularly when the responsibilities grow stronger, when there is expansion of the scope of operation, it becomes more and more critical for the leadership to truly understand their responsibility, to discharge this huge amana those they are responsible for. I was reminded of this over the last few weeks as many institutions grow. This is nothing unique to our area, but there is an established center which is going through some difficulty as people on the leadership try to engage each other, expand their responsibilities, and somehow manage. And because of difficulties, I have some responsibility in mediating, trying to make sure the disputes are resolved in an amicable manner. And so I'm going to a topic that I have addressed before, but it's a good reminder for all of us. And that is the significance of leadership from the Islamic perspective. And I'm addressing not just as an outsider, but I'm putting myself under the magnifying glass because recently with the Islamic Society of North America, I was assigned some leadership responsibilities. I seek your du'as. I'm incapable, but alhamdulillah, Allah places you in these positions, and you have to discharge your responsibility as best possible. So I seek your dua and your support, inshallah. But let me begin with the reminder of the Prophet ﷺ. When he said, each one of you is a shepherd, and each one is responsible for his flock. The ruler is a shepherd responsible for his subjects. A husband is a shepherd responsible for his family. A wife is a shepherd responsible for her house and family and children. A servant is a shepherd responsible for managing the duties of property entrusted to him by his master. This covers the full range of leadership roles that any of us may fall into, all the way down from a servant to the ruler. And this responsibility, my dear brothers and sisters, is an important amana. And proper discharge of that amana becomes a significant aspect of our faith. The Prophet ﷺ emphasized this when he said, لا إيمان لمن لا أمانة له ولا دين لمن لا عقد له. There is no faith for a person who is not trustworthy. There's no faith. That's a strong admonition. astaghfirullah, everything that I stand for is questioned if I am not able to discharge the amana. And there is no religion for one who does not keep his trust or his amana. So these are profound reminders for us to keep in mind. And then the reminder from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, when he said, a believer is one in whom the people trust with their lives and their property. So, the focus on shepherding as a mark of leadership is a very important point for us to keep in mind, and I'm reminding myself and all of us. When we are told that each one is a shepherd, a guardian, a steward, a leader, responsible for our jurisdiction, the flock that we are told to be taking care of. So literally, each one of us is in a position of responsibility as a leader. That concept of leadership tends to be misunderstood sometimes. That it applies to others who are in formal positions of authority, those who are officers of a masjid, maybe the president, the vice president, or elected officers, nominated titles, not to ordinary people, but in routine aspects of our life, in our day-to-day decisions, in how we manage our relationships with our spouses, our children, our friends, and our circle of social and business networks. Each one of us is a shepherd with our flock, brothers and sisters, and that is my reminder. And the role of leader is one of self-confidence, of emotional maturity, of intellectual capacity, and of selfless service. So the prophetic metaphor of a shepherd is hence critical for us to keep in mind. It is not the formal education or degrees that matter, not the titles that are assigned to us, but of knowing our responsibility, of understanding our flock, of approaching the people who are responsible for, and harnessing our capabilities to guide and serve our flock. Leadership then, according to Islam, is a sacred trust and amana. And it comes with important responsibility of mas'uliyah. So there is al-amana, the trust, and al-mas'uliyah, the responsibilities that come with it. So a leader is obliged, that is, all of us again are obliged to meet our obligations with high commitment to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the Khaliq, the supreme creator, and to the makhluk, his creation. And hence, that ayah that was recited, يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تخونوا الله والرسول. So do not betray your amana to Allah first, and then the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, وَتَخُونُوا أَمَانَاتِكُمْ وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. So there are other amanas, the trust in the worldly concept that we have to keep in mind. And the Prophet ﷺ, his life, his sayings, his deeds offer an excellent leadership model for us. Remember his growth based on divine guidance and providence. From an orphan boy with changing guardianship over 3 times that happened in his formative years, into an undisputed leader of an ummah. This gives us an ideal template for leadership. And perhaps the most important guiding principle is his saying, and this is one thing that I try to keep in mind, and all of us can, where he said, the Prophet ﷺ, the leader of people is a servant to them. The leader of people is a servant to them. A servant who doesn't draw on his authority, doesn't want to be projected up, doesn't want to come down on his people first, but somebody who recognizes humility and modesty, that for whatever reason Allah has placed him in a position of authority, and he has to serve. He has to serve. He has to serve. So the leader has to meet the obligations to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then discharge the obligations to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation, particularly his or her flock, based on the vested authority for the benefit and service of the community, with upright and honest actions, with consultation and compassion. So when we keep this broadly in mind, and we talk a little bit more about in detail, it sounds so amazing, doesn't it, that can we ever have a leader who is corrupt? Can we ever have a leader who does disservice? Can we have a leader who takes advantage of people? Because that goes, it is antithetical to what is defined as a leader, being a servant. And then remember that all of us are also followers. We are all followers to one degree or another. Our amana exists as followers too. The amana of choosing the right rulers, being a part of choosing the right leaders. This is a gift and an amana and a trust from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then we invest in those who deserve these positions of leadership. Then we give full cooperation. And then we avoid rebellion and discord. We cannot demolish what we are expected to build by way of leadership. So, that amana goes two ways in terms of leadership and followers. And we are all leaders and we are all followers. And this prophetic metaphor of shepherdship is important once again because it is applied throughout history. The Prophet ﷺ emphasized this. He said, there is no prophet who did not serve as a shepherd. I find that very interesting. And he was asked, did you do so? Yeah, Rasulullah. And he said, yes, I herded sheep as I was growing up. And then the Prophet Ibrahim, Dawood, Musa, Isa, all of them, may the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be upon them, all had this historic upbringing as shepherds too. So let us keep in mind this concept of shepherding as one who serves and cares for the flock. So the leader, the shepherd, begins with focusing on a continuing journey. Learns from the past, understands and addresses the present, and prepares for the future. The shepherd cares for his flock of sheep along the path of grazing, feeding together in a protected environment. And as a rule, the shepherd gives direction to the flock by first assessing the landscape and then leading from the front. There is direct engagement. The shepherd doesn't send somebody out and say, oh, you check it out, you take the bullets and I'll be there managing as a general from the back. The shepherd goes out. There is constantly being vigilant. It is a full-time job as leaders and shepherds of our flock, as parents, as a father, as a mother, as a steward of the family, and then when we move on into positions of authority in mosques, in businesses, and other places. And at times, remember, the shepherd walks behind and follows the flock, especially in the evening as the flock is returning home, gathering those who may have straggled and protecting them from the stealthy attack of wolves and others. At times, the shepherd walks beside the flock, along the middle of the flock, checking those who are having difficulty, finding those who have weaknesses, supporting them, strengthening them. And the unity of the flock is essential for the shepherd, and the cohesiveness of the flock is so important. For safety, of course, there is the natural instinct of predators to scatter the flock and then attack the individual victims. And that is a metaphor that applies in our society too. There are so many people out there trying to divide our community, setting off one institution against the other because it becomes easier to attack the stragglers. And our role, particularly as parents within families, knowing how our sheep are and how do we stay involved and engaged with them. And the shepherd's role, if a goat wanders off, that is bound to happen within our families, within our friends, in institutions. A goat wandering off, and then the shepherd has to call it back. And if the goat keeps straying, then the shepherd sometimes has to hurl a stone further beyond so that the sheep is concerned and turns back towards the flock, unto the family. If a sheep becomes lost in the hills, then the shepherd has to decide, should I leave my flock and go and try to protect the person or the sheep who's gone off? Or is it past the point and I need to take into